Welcome back. In the previous video, I told you what is an API and why do we need and use APIs. So in our project, the Flash type project, to get these paragraphs, we are also going to use the APIs. For this project, I have been using a simple API which is getting from meta for psum.com. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's okay. So yeah, it's this particular website. You can copy and paste this and go there. So yes, it's simple. It basically generates the number of paragraphs containing number of sentences each, and it's very simple. So it exactly does what we need to do. So in our scenario, an ideal situation would be one paragraph containing 8 or 9, let's take 9 sentences each. So let's generate it, and as you can see, it is going to take us to this particular URL where we will find the generated paragraph. So we can just copy and paste this particular link itself, which is going to be the meta for psum.com/paragraphs/1/9. So this 1 indicates the number of paragraphs and 9 indicates the number of sentences. So in this video, I am going to tell you how can you integrate these APIs with your front-end projects. Within itself, handling APIs is a huge concept. But for now, we are using one simple API just to fetch some paragraphs. So for the context of this particular video, this is going to be a very simple API in which we are going to make a GET request. So this is a very simple use case. So yes, I am going to go back to my app.jsx, and let's do one thing. Let's copy and paste. Since we have already copied that, let's copy it into a URL or maybe API URL or service URL, something like that. It's just your wish, whatever name you want to give it. So I'm going to call it service URL. So as you can see, it is meta for psum.com/paragraphs/9. So don't make any spelling mistake, otherwise it's going to result in an error. So to make the API requests, we have endless options. Trust me guys, we could make an Ajax call, we could make a simple JavaScript native fetch method, we could use Axios, and there are so many libraries to do that. Although I prefer using Axios, but for this project, since it's a simple API, I am fine with using fetch, and I'm going to teach you how can we use fetch. So this fetch method is very simple. So inside the fetch, we provide the argument as the URL of that particular API, which is going to be this thing. So inside the URL, when we call this fetch method, it's going to return us a promise. If you don't know much about promises, don't worry. So JavaScript has this concept of promises. So API calls are asynchronous in nature. They don't give back the response as soon as you call them. So let me give you a very simple example. 1 + 1 = 2. This was immediate. The computer would do the computation and return to you the result. 1 + 1 = 2. But here, the things are not happening at your computer. Here you are asking for information from some other computer, which might be in some other country, which might be in some other continent, which might be at a completely different location. So it takes time to fetch the information, and our system and our execution flow is not going to stop for that particular response. Otherwise, it will become very slow. So let's say if we would have to make 10 API calls, and let's say one API call takes around let's say 400 milliseconds, or let's say your internet is very slow and it's taking 1 second. So 10 API calls would take 10 seconds. That will make your application super slow. So yes, this method does not return to you the data. Instead, it returns to you the promise by using .then. So this is again something related to JavaScript. So by using .then on any promise, by using .then, you can now get the response. So what will happen is, it will make the request to this particular API, and then as soon as they return back to you the response, this particular code piece will start running. So this particular code piece is nothing but again a function. As you can see, this is a simple arrow function, a one line arrow function, where we are taking one argument and we are doing something with it. So yes, then it basically returns back this function, this response, and then we can use this response to do anything. We can save this response in our state, we can save this response to do anything. But here something that we should notice is that it does not return us the actual information. It returns us a response object, a JavaScript response object, which is just an HTTP response, not an actual JSON. So in case if you are wondering what's a JSON, again JSON is basically a JavaScript object notation. You can easily check it out on Google, which again you can convert it into a key value pair and all those things. It could be a nested key value pairs, it could contain an array, it could contain list, and so on. But for now, basically, let's just see it as, instead of JSON, let's just see it as it returns a HTTP response, not the actual information that we need. So that HTTP response object is not the actual object that we need. So inside on that HTTP response, there is a method called .json. So we use response.json to actually fetch the JSON out of it. But again, this is also an asynchronous operation, and this returns us the promise instead of returning us the actual value. So then we chain it to one more then. So then this is another then. So what will happen is, when we call the fetch, it's going to make an API call to this thing and return a promise. As soon as the promise finishes executing and they are able to send us the response, it will run this particular code piece, which is going to be response gives response.json. Now again, this is also something which returns promise. Now once this returns, this code piece will run, and now we will have the actual information or the actual data that we needed. But in our case, this is not a JSON, this is a text. So instead of .json, we are going to use a .text method. So yes, let's have a look at how we are going to implement that. For now, I know this is something really bad. I am going to make the API call inside render itself. But yes, for now, let's just to check whether it works or not, let's just try to do it. So I am going to call fetch inside my render method, and I'm going to provide the service URL. So as you know, the service URL is nothing but http//meta or something like that, and this is the actually URL of that particular API. And now this is going to return a promise, which I'm going to use a .then on, and then it will return a response. From my response, I am actually going to use response.json. No, as I told you, this particular notation is not JSON, it's a text notation. So I am going to use response.text, and very simple, this again returns a promise. So I'm going to use another .then, and now I will have the information that I required, and from that information I can actually do a lot of things. For example, I can do console.log and API response is, and I can print it out to be as information, and that's as simple as that. So yes, let's go to my console log, and as you can see, let me refresh the page. As you can see, it actually calls the render method, and now we see the API response is something that we got from the API. This is super cool. But before ending this video, let me just comment it out, because as I told you, this is not something that we should be doing. I'm going to tell you the reason in just the next video. I'm going to talk about lifecycle methods and why do we use lifecycle methods, and why we should not call any asynchronous operation or any other important time consuming thing within our render method. So yes, see you in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.